right, so we're on YouTube, and so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Today we have the honor to talk to Dr. Robert Mannis, and Dr. Mannis has written this wonderful book called Ars Nova. And a moment ago, I had it on my screen, so maybe I can share it. I just have to find it again. Okay, I've got it. All right, so the cover of the book looks like this, and it's Ars Nova, the understanding the alchemical mystery in the Age of Aquarius. And Dr. Mannis has a number of special facts about him. Number one, he's one of the founders of the Jung Society of Washington, where many of us have visited over the years. And well, it's a very interesting group, I would say. and also he's written this wonderful book, and he's a psychotherapist in Frederick, Maryland. And the first thing I wanted to mention here is that as I was reading this book, and I read every word of it, what kept coming to my mind is a historical Shaker tune called "It's a Gift to Be Simple." And because of copyright strikes, I can't play the tune for you on YouTube here, but I want to just recite the verse. And,
we could all sing it.
Pardon?
We could all sing it.
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
Go ahead.
Well, all right. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to share my screen against my better judgment because I have my outline for the day here. And so there are the words. And if there's someone who has a nice voice that wants to sing it, please do. Do I have volunteers? Colleen, are you going to sing it?
Well, only if you'll sing it with me, Skip.
Sure.
You
Okay,
start.
let's try.
I'll sing it with you.
Well,
good.
Tim also has a lovely voice, so let's see if we can do it.
All right.
I'll sing it with you, Colleen.
Okay, great.
Okay, and so what's left out here is the chorus, the last chorus, and that is the second verse here. So we'll have to, if we're going to sing it, we have to sing both choruses too. So it's a gift to be simple. It's a gift to be free.
Tis a
Come around just where we ought to be.
And when
We find ourselves in a place just right, it will be in the valley of love and delight. Oh my God. When truth is gained to bow and to bend, we shan't be ashamed to turn. We'll be to turn will be our delight. Till by turning, we come around to light. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, it will be in the valley of love and
delight.
Well, that was terrible, but it usually is when we try to sing together.
Okay, well, I apologize for that rendition.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
But I suppose we've sort of knocked out the cobwebs at this point. So anyway, so be ready to be enchanted by the story of the Titans. Mariah and Bosco, and by their eternal friend, Bob Mannis. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to Bob and go ahead.
Thank you, Skip. I've been very fortunate to bear witness to a couple of people I met a long time ago, back when I was on the road in Europe on my motorcycle, my BSA. And I'll try to take you through the story and share it with you as Skip has appreciated. And I just, again, have to say how fortunate I was to be present to these two people and their life. I first met Bosco, or rather I met his girlfriend, Mariah, in the kitchen of a hostel, a youth hostel in the south of Paris, just south of Paris. I had come up from Lyon, and I was quite tired and I didn't quite know where I was. And so she seemed like a very nice person to approach and ask questions of, which I did. It was late in December, and my plan, I had unfortunately run out of money. So my plan was to return to London, sell my motorcycle, and buy a ticket back to the States for Christmas time. And so I approached Mariah in the kitchen, and we began a conversation about where I was and where I wanted to get to. And I told her a little bit about myself and my motorcycle and what I'd been up to. And it was a very compelling conversation. I didn't exactly know why. She was certainly very beautiful and very mysterious, and not in the least seductive, nor was she particularly matter of fact. She was just engaging. And I remember it was a brief conversation, probably didn't take more than 15 minutes. But when I returned upstairs, I felt differently than when I had originally approached her in the kitchen. I guess I laid down, took a nap, or read probably, and returned to the common room a little while later, where I told her a little about myself and my motorcycle and what I'd been up to. And it was a very, can everybody hear me okay? That was,
yeah, I'm sorry I didn't mention, but please, everyone should be muted. And Bob and I have agreed to have a conversation about this aspect of the book. So he and I will be doing that over the next 30 to 45 minutes. And so I'd appreciate it if everyone would just stay muted. And if there's any issues, you can share them with me on chat. And Tim is also here as co-host. So anyway, I'm sorry, Bob, for the interruption. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I understand. No problem. So I returned to the common area, and there she was again. This beautiful, mysterious woman sitting alone at a table, and there was a chair next to her. And the spirit of that time was very open. It was very friendly. One had a sense that they were automatically included as opposed to excluded, which sometimes I feel these days is more the spirit of things. And so I I summoned my courage and walked right up to her and asked her if I could sit next to her. And she invited me to. You know, it's hard to describe the spirit of that time, and maybe it's a little romanticized, but I felt that those days were special. That was kind of like Hermann Hesse's Journey to the East. There was a pregnancy to the time and excitement to the time, and to just be participating in it without a special knowledge of where it was going or what it really meant, but one could feel it. And she certainly emanated that feeling. So I summoned my bravado. I sat down next to her and I said, "Hi again." And she smiled, that enigmatic smile she had, and welcomed me. And I said, rather bravely, I thought, "Are you traveling alone?" And she said, "No, I'm not. I'm with my boyfriend. He's right over there." And I glanced over at the couch in the fireplace and I saw no one. And I looked back at her rather incredulously, and she looked at me and smiled. And she said, "That's Bosco over there, but nobody really sees him the first time." So this was pretty mysterious. I looked again, and sure enough, there was this rather nebbish, plain-looking individual sitting there. And I was quite taken aback that I hadn't noticed him the first time. She said, "That's my boyfriend, and I'm really crazy about him." And I thought, "Oh dear, I'm kind of crazy about you already, and you've got a boyfriend." And it was as if she could see through me. I'm kind of looking at her there, and she said, "Come with me. Let's go together and meet Bosco." And as we got up, she took my hand, which was very exciting for a guy like me on the road. A woman takes my hand. And I kind of like a puppy dog, I walk over to him, and she sits down across from him. So that leaves me the spot next to him on the couch. And I'm having a hard time. Something's going on here, and I can't quite figure it out. So I sit down. And I notice he's reading a book by Marcel Proust. And I was pretty callow back then. Maybe I still am, but not as much. And so I looked at him, and everything's quiet. So I said, "Do you like the book?" And he looked at me rather flatly, not with arrogance, but kind of flatly. And he said, "Well, if you like smells." And at that sudden moment, I felt like I was in the deep end of the swimming pool, because either this guy is way above me or he's a horse's ass. And I can't tell which. So I stayed tuned. And at that point, Mariah jumped in to my rescue. And she said to Bosco, Bob and I had met earlier in the day in the kitchen. And suddenly the atmosphere changed for me. They were listening intently to me. And I couldn't help myself. I suddenly started talking, maybe like a fool, but I told them all about my motorcycle, which I was fond of, and the trip. And, you know, I even remember telling them about the gypsy camp I saw down by the river in Lyon, where I had left earlier that day. And they just let me chat on and ask me sincere questions, and were just the sweetest couple, because they didn't offer hardly anything about themselves except to listen to me, which made me happy. And so as we proceeded, the conversation eventually ended, and I called it an evening and went to bed. But I had the strangest feeling that something bigger than I was going on. And I also had a proportion that I was rather small in comparison to them. Well, the next morning when I got up, I went down to the kitchen, and there Mariah and Bosco were sitting across from each other sipping tea. And she waved to me. She saw me, waved me over and motioned for me to sit next to her, which I gladly did. And she reached out her hand and just took my hand at the top of the table and gently squeezed it. And I felt affirmed. It was a very pleasant feeling. She then proceeded to invite me to join them for the day. As I recall, the plan was to go to the Fontainebleau Palace and the Barbizon Woods adjacent to that area. I knew nothing about that. But the invitation was nothing I could turn down. So I just simply said, yes, I'd be honored to go. You know, and at that we gathered our stuff for the day and we got ready, and she was driving a little Peugeot. And as we were driving down the road, I was struck by the fact that Peugeot was a lot like a Volkswagen Bug that my girlfriend from high school had owned. And to make conversation from the back seat, I just said, boy, this is a lot like a Volkswagen that the Germans make. And unexpectedly, Mariah blew up. I mean, she just went off. And she looks over her shoulder at me and yells, I wouldn't buy a goddamn German anything. And well, here I was having a wonderful time with this mysterious couple, and suddenly I have stepped into a cow pie, and things in the car got kind of sparse. And then I saw Bosco do what Bosco does. He gently reached out and just touched her back. He wasn't tamping her down. He was just reassuring her that he was there. And I just marveled at the grace with which he extended himself to Mariah. She was obviously very upset, and I had no idea what had torqued her to that degree. So we quietly proceeded to the Barbizon Woods. And at that, Mariah said that she would like to excuse herself. She would like some alone time. And that was very fortuitous because neither one of us were about to object to that. As it turns out, it was fortuitous. And initially, it was kind of awkward because I really don't know Bosco at this point. So he and I get out and we start to saunter through the woods along a trail. And Bosco has this amazing ability to figure out almost exactly what's needed in any moment emotionally. And so he could see that I was proceeding rather awkwardly with him. And he invited me. Well, he didn't invite me. He just started talking extemporaneously about the Barbizon Woods, which I knew nothing about. And then he was telling me about an enclave of painters, of fine artists that had gathered loosely and would be referred to historically as that group identified by the Barbizon group. I've subsequently taken some interest in that and like what they painted, but I didn't know anything about that. So here's Bosco making me feel accepted and warm, and we're talking some more. Mostly he's holding forth and I'm listening respectfully and attentively. And then he starts telling me about Van Gogh. And Van Gogh is a real favorite of his. And I don't know, I must have kind of slipped into a quiet reverie of my own because for the life of me, I can't remember what he said, except that I liked it. He was very erudite. He knew a lot of stuff, and I didn't know much stuff. I was, I think I was a little too caught up in my undereducated state, my identity with the hippies, and just kind of living day to day on a lark. And but then Bosco speaks German, and I had taken a lot of German in high school. So it turns out that about the only thing I could offer was my remembrance of a novella by Thomas Mann called Tonio Kruger, which is a great little book, really. And he had read it, and I'd actually made my way through it in German. So we really started to get some traction. The basic premise of the book is that the artist kind of lives on the periphery of society with 1 foot in and 1 foot out as a kind of a partaker of life, but also at the same time rather outside of life. And so that in the book, that identity of Tonio Kruger is contrasted with Hans Hansen, the typical blonde-haired, blue-eyed German who everybody loves, everybody wants to be a part of. And the dynamic between them is the basis for Mann's story that I felt very much at home with, because we both at times had identified our sense of ourselves outside of society looking in, and then other times where we felt very much a part of everything, very comfortable with the collective. And that was really a kind of a ceiling conversation I had with Bosco. And then he went on to kind of offer, like somehow we were getting more connected. And he offered to me his feelings about Carl Jung, who I had some knowledge of, but not very much at all. And it, unexpectedly, suddenly I'm immersed in this rather erudite conversation with somebody I don't know very well, but I sure am enjoying it. And as we saunter, we talk, it becomes easier. He shared, I shared. And toward the end of the day, we hear this whistle. And we both perk up and look in the direction, and there's Mariah with whistling like this to it. She can whistle very well. And like two well-trained bird dogs, we just headed right straight toward her. And she had recomposed herself. She was back being the amazing Mariah, the mysterious Mariah. And we all got back in the Peugeot, went over to Fontainebleau for a while, a beautiful palace. I've never been back, but as I remember it, was quite beautiful. And then we returned to the youth hostel. We shared a meal because that was kind of de rigueur back in those days. What you had, you shared with people that you were sharing it. We did that, and I went to bed. And I couldn't get to sleep right away because I was so wound up. I was so taken by Bosco's confession of his love for Mariah and his acknowledgement that he was really a very fortunate person to be on the receiving end of her love, with all due humility. And I certainly agreed with him, at least in my mind, that he was a lucky duck. And maybe a little envious too, but that wasn't my place. And I really liked the guy. I mean, there was no sense of competition or anything else. He was just a hell of a nice guy that I could talk on different level with, and we could connect. So the next morning, it's time to go. And I go down early in the morning. I go down, and there's Mariah sitting there by herself in the kitchen. And I said, "Oh, hi." I said, "Oh, incidentally, we had exchanged addresses earlier the evening before around dinner. They expressed interest in staying in touch with me. They knew I was leaving, and I was more than happy to give them my address and my contact information. And so there she was, just sitting there. She had long dark hair, almost black, brown going to black, and she had the most amazing blue eyes. And I've just always been taken by the incredible blue eyes that she had. And there she was, this goddess, and here I am getting ready to leave. And we strike up a little conversation, and she says, "May I walk outside with you?" And I said, "Oh, certainly." So I went to get my motorcycle. I got it ready to get back on and got dressed. I had picked up for cheap a German trench coat from World War II, and but that kept me warm. It was a good trench coat. And there I was standing looking at her, and it was a little quiet. And I said, "You know, Mariah, I really like you." And she said, "And I like you too, Bob." And then I looked at her and I said, "You know, your beauty could stop a freight train." And she said, "Thank you." She said, "That's what I like about Bosco." I said, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, he enjoys my beauty too. And frankly, we can have it as a gift together." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I'm not always going to be beautiful." And this conversation now is spinning beyond me. What do you mean you're not going to be beautiful? She said, "He can look into my heart. He can see who I am." She said, "And I fundamentally believe that if I turned into a frog tomorrow, he would still love me every bit as much as he loves me today." And I've never had a conversation with someone of that magnitude like that before. The insight, the humility, the acceptance of what it is. I mean, here I am. I'm standing in front of Venus incarnate. And once again, I'm feeling like I'm in the deep end of the swimming pool and I'm sinking. It's an awful feeling. So I'm very anxious. I'm very nervous. I don't know what to do. And Mariah read me like a book. She just could see through me. And God bless her. She just reaches out and grabs the lapels of that German trench coat, pulled me close and kissed me right on the lips. And I couldn't believe it, but I also knew what it was. It was the kiss of a woman whose heart belonged to another man. And she was obviously fond of me and wanted to extend to me that affection. But I was not to confuse that kiss with any other kind of kiss. And I got that immediately. And I thanked her very much. Put my helmet on. I fired up that motorcycle in a second. And as I pull away, I look back over my shoulder and I swear, as she's waving to me goodbye, she is lip syncing, "I love you." Or at least I think she was. I never clarified that with her. I felt maybe it was better to believe that than to be disabused of it. So anyway, I rode hard and long that day. It was a miserable ride, inside and out. It was late December and cold. And when I finally got to where I was going, I remember going to bed and thinking about what a callow, limited guy I really was, and that I had just borne witness to a relationship that was well beyond my ability to comprehend or even participate in. And at that point, I started to think of them, Bosco and Mariah, as the Titans. And I'm on the competitive side, so I promised myself that from then on, I was not going to be that callow youth, that I was going to further educate myself, and I was going to grow up, and I was going to set sail for the stars, because I knew that was the direction to head with those guys. So that was my first encounter with them. I then had to go back, and as it turns out, I have served in the United States Army as a lieutenant, the office of the Surgeon General, and I had to do that for 2 years. Not as a psychologist. I wasn't anywhere near that. I have an undergraduate degree in finance, but I served, and I got through it and decided that I would change the direction of my life, not in part due to the Titans. I got letters from them. It's in the book. There are other stories, but I'd like to shift now to my next story about them. Now they had money. They would come to the States, and when they did, I would visit them. We would hang out. We came to be good buddies, and it was odd because I was clearly the third wheel, but I never felt like I didn't belong like a third wheel. It was just like I was included, and there were 3 of us, but I was the little guy. Or as I came to think of myself, as the beeve, as in beaver, the Cleaver family. And so in the book, I refer to myself as the beeve because it took me a long time to grow up with the Titans. So it turns out that they decided to marry. And they had solidified their relationship and had invited me to participate with them in the marriage. But I was invited. The only time in my life I have performed the function of a bridesmaid at Mariah's request. And I didn't quite know what to make of that, but again, these are the Titans. They call the shots, and if I'm smart, I play along as well as I can. So Gerben Johann Boer was Mariah's father. He was very well-to-do Dutch burger. The backstory on him is in the book. So I stayed with him sometimes. He has a beautiful townhouse in Amsterdam, as do Mariah and Bosco. And I remember hanging out there for a while. I was in graduate school. And one Friday, I was at Mariah and Bosco's townhouse. In the morning, Bosco had to do something. And Mariah said to me, Bobby, let's go to Harlem. Now, she had taken to calling me Bobby. They both came to calling me Bobby. It was kind of fitting. It was it was kind of a form of the beeve, but they meant it affectionately. They weren't, it wasn't a put down. It was just the diminutive. And I was Bobby. So Bobby I am. So, because I'm rather full of myself at times, she said, what we'll do, Bob, is we'll go and we'll grab the train and we'll take it to Harlem. And I said to her, oh, you mean we're going to take the A train, Mariah? And she burst out laughing. And she said, your jokes are so bad. I love them. And I didn't think my joke was that bad at all. I thought I was doing pretty good with it, but it amused her. So we took the train. And I don't know if anyone has been to Harlem. It is a beautiful city. I love Harlem. And we got off the train, and to go to the main plaza, you go south from the train station. It's within walking distance. And we walked down, and here I am in a beautiful spring day with Mariah in her sundress, just looking elegant. And I'm so happy to be with her. She's so enchanting. She's so genuine. And we took a seat there in the plaza next to the Baalweg Cathedral, I think it's called. My Dutch is very bad, but here's a European cathedral of hundreds of years old, and we're sitting in the plaza. I'm sipping a Heineken or two, and she's working on some red wine, and we're just shooting the breeze. And a beautiful spring day, and it's just an enchanting conversation. Mariah very much respected her dad's money, and he sent her to the best schools in Europe. She has a very classic European education. She spoke 4 languages fluently, English, French, Flemish, and Dutch. And one time I even heard her converse in Italian. And I said, oh, you speak Italian too? And she goes, no, I'm not very good with the Romance languages. Well, yeah, okay. So with her, there was always a lot to talk about. And I was just having a great time. Here's Friday, I'm in Holland. I'm with her. They're getting married, and I'm in just great spirits. Well, out of nowhere, she says, hey, Bobby, what? Let's go salsa dancing. Oh, no, I can't dance. I really can't dance. I have tried and tried, and I can't dance. True confession, and I know it. And anybody that's ever seen me try to dance knows I can't dance. So suddenly what just was feeling like one of the best times of my whole life with Mariah, suddenly we're going to go salsa dancing of all the darn things to do. I said, well, okay, Mariah, where are we going? And she said, I don't know yet, Bobby. I'll find a place. I said, are you kidding me? You mean we're just going to walk around Harlem until you find a salsa dance? And she said, yes. And I said, wait a minute. We're going to go salsa dancing, or we're going to find the Holy Grail. And she said, absolutely. And I said, all right, in Mariah, I do trust. So we took off and we walked. And it's beautiful walking around Harlem. It's, as I said, it's a great city. And I'm enjoying, the women on the bicycles wheeling around with their little bells, and the people. And the Dutch are very friendly people. They're very nice. And suddenly, we've been walking around for a while. And I'm just walking with her, She stops. And she looks over at me and she said, "Do you hear that?" I said, "No, I don't hear a thing." She said, "I do. Follow me. You find the beat, you follow the beat." All right, let's go. And sure enough, down the street, through the alley, around the bend, and now I can start to hear something, up the stairs, into the building, and we walk into a salsa dance that's taking place. Oh boy, just my nightmare come true. Now I'm going to have to dance. And this, I want to be Mariah's guy for the day. I want to make her happy. I know she likes to dance. And she sees that I'm turning to stone. So she goes up to the bar and buys another glass of wine for herself and 2 grolsches for me, which I see as the solution to my problem here, or at least the beginning solution. So I down them, and she can see that I'm flummoxed, and she's very kind. And she says, "Bobby, watch." And she walks up to this guy who's standing on the sideline and invites him to dance. And she just takes charge. She slows everything down. I can see she's trying to teach me from a distance. And I still have a lot of anxiety about all this. So I go over and I buy myself another grolsch. And she comes back and she said, "You can do this, Bobby." I said, "I don't know, Mariah. I'm not very good at this." And she said, she got on her tiptoes. She's tall, but I'm 6'1". She got on her tiptoes and she whispered in my ear, "Bobby, I think you can be the king of all fake salsa dancers this evening." And suddenly the doors flew open. "Oh, I can be a fake salsa dancer. Okay, I'd like to dance. Yep, I can do this." And so off we go. And I do my level best to be a fake salsa dancer because I want to be the king. Well, we're having a good time. And of course, I'm dancing. At least I'm fake dancing. And she takes a break and she walks up to the head of the dance band there and speaks to him. And the next thing I know, I'm being cited over the PA in English for being the king of fake salsa dancers that night. And God bless all those people there. They caught the spirit of it and they clapped for me. And I hammed it up and I bowed to them. And we all enjoyed my kingdom as a fake salsa dancer. And we danced. And we danced. So in the spirit of that, we got back on the train and returned to the townhouse. And Bosco was there by then. And, as I was saying about Bosco, he can pick up the spirit of things remarkably well. He is very good at reading the situation. And he could see that Mariah and I had been laughing and dancing and having a really good time. So he put some music on, salsa music. And once I heard that, I had to show him all my good fake salsa dance moves. And we just had a wonderful time that evening, the 3 of us dancing together. And for one evening, I was back in the high life again as that salsa dancer that I'm not. So I doffed my hat to all the fake salsa dancers out there. May everybody have a good time at least once. So, the wedding. Let's shift to the wedding. Now, Mariah had seriously invited me to be a bridesmaid. So there was lots of joking around that. I said, "Oh boy, Mariah, do I get to wear a dress?" And she said, "Yeah, Bobby, as long as you're willing to wear a garter and a thong." I said, "Well, that's I can't do that." So we had a lot of wonderful exchanges about that. But every picture that was taken, I was included as a bridesmaid. And I took that very seriously. And there were some very nice bridesmaids to enjoy time with. So because of Gerben's wealth and his influence, and because of Bosco's aesthetic, being the Titans, they were going to do it their way and they were going to do it right. And so what they did was they rented the church in Zundert, Holland, very near the Belgian border. And that is the church that Van Gogh grew up in his first 13 years of life. And they rented that church in order to have their wedding there. And they took it a step further. They invited everybody to don, in the wedding invitation, there were pictures of men and women. And everybody was invited to don the period piece of the 1860s. And everybody did. I selected a high-collared shirt, jacket, a gray felt hat from a self-portrait that Van Gogh did in 1886. So I was a little ahead of myself, but there we were in Zundert, all gathered in our period piece outside the church. And it was just a magic time, because here are these women in hoop skirts, men with tall black hats. Everybody had a hat. Even people went so far as to get wire-rimmed glasses that were typical of that time. And I remember looking around and seeing one fella, he had a monocle, which I thought was a great touch for this wedding. Later on, I learned that this wedding was quite the event in High Dutch society, because a lot of people didn't get invited that thought they should have been invited to this wedding. So I didn't know it at the time, but there was quite a bit of unhappy gossip around as to who got invited and who didn't. But that wasn't my worry. That wasn't my problem. But so there we are outside the church. Beautiful day, beautiful spring day. And the doors open and we walk in. And the Titans had kept it a secret, but the inside of the church were these incredible blue and white. It was so beautiful. And we were all just amazed as we walked. This is the church that Van Gogh grew up in. This is where his father preached. This is where he was. There they were, Bosco and Mariah, up on the altar, waiting for us. And because I was in the wedding party, the people in the party walked up to the altar and created a semicircle around the Titans. And the last person in was Gerben, Mariah's dad. because it was his job to give her away. And he walked up to the altar, and he just had a glow. Gerben was a great guy, just had a glow about him. This hunk of white hair. And before the ceremony started, there was a 3-piece ensemble for music. It consisted of a cellist, a guitar player, and a sitar player. The three of them. The cellist was a woman. And they played the most amazing, spontaneous, extemporaneous music. And it was just beautiful. But there was no classic music. It was just spontaneous. But the background to it was that Mariah had practiced. She's a very good pianist. She had practiced with them, and they had worked out previously much of what they were going to spontaneously play. And I spoke to the cellist later on, and she said that Mariah could easily have participated with them as a pianist, but because she was the bride, she couldn't play piano. Anyway, it was just really nice. We had the ceremony. It was brief. They're not particularly religious. It was very nice. And I remember winking at Gerben and him smiling broadly at me as his wife, or as his daughter was being married, Bosco's wife. And then everything stopped. And it was announced to us that Bosco and Mariah were going to go for a walk on the Brabant Heath where Van Gogh grew up. His mom encouraged him to explore nature and draw and paint, and gave him all kinds of utensils to paint with, paper, and encouraged it. And he spent a lot of time by himself out there on that heath, learning the birds, the names of the birds, butterflies, and beetles. He had a fantastic beetle collection as a kid from his time there, as he spent a lot of alone time. And so Bosco and Mariah wanted that time after the marriage to be by themselves. So we were left there in the church, listening to the trio reprise what they had already started. And as I said, I can't describe it other than it was just incredibly beautiful, transcendent music, spontaneous, extemporaneous. And yet it had a fullness to it. And there was a melody that one could follow as they developed variations in their playing. Very good musicians. So then we all went over to the reception. And there was a 10-piece band waiting. And we all gathered there, and the bar was open, and we waited. And we waited. And Mariah had a good sense of timing. And one of the things she didn't want to do was to arrive too soon, that you could kind of build an anticipation. And when they arrived in different dress. Mariah arrived in a very tight black dress with a white blouse and a red kerchief around her neck. And her hair was pulled straight back into a tight bun. And Bosco was styling. He had greased his hair back and he had changed his clothes. And he was there ready to dance. And Bosco, is the dancer I'm not. He can dance. He doesn't dance a lot. He dances well, and he enjoys it. And they had practiced. And so they walk, the band stops, they walk out on the floor, they stand in the middle of the floor, and on Mariah's cue, the band starts playing a tango, and they're off, dancing together with a tango as their dance routine. Now, the tango is this incredibly chauvinistic invention that the Argentines came up with in the 20s and the 30s. It's the dance of the bordello. It is where the prospective patron dances with his consort in anticipation of later events in the evening to kind of test the physical compatibility of the two. I think it's a great dance. It's become a classic dance to witness in Argentina and Buenos Aires, but I especially like its chthonic origins, its earthly origins. And sure enough, they could dance it, and they did. And as I've said in the book, it's like watching white sin unfold. There was something audacious about it. There was something incredibly sensual, sexual. You could see that some people were appalled. Other people were envious. Other people were confused. And everybody soon was having a good time with the good music and the beauty of these two very good dancers. And finally, they stopped. They were quite sweaty. They had danced for quite a while. It was just beautiful. And so I had a couple Heinekens at that point, and I sought Gerben out because I was really excited about the Titans dancing for us. And I walked up to Gerben and I said, "Hey, Gerben, that tango, man, Bosco and Mariah, that tango was the tango that really was a very good tango." And Gerben just looks at me, stares at me, raises his eyebrow. Suddenly, I feel like I'm in the doghouse. I guess it's one thing as their buddy to witness this incredibly sensual performance to live music. It's a whole other thing to be the bride's father, watching her dance in such an expressive way. So Gerben never long is without words. He said he needed to go get a Heineken and returned, and all was back to normal. But I realized I'd stretched him out a little bit, which pleased me a little bit. But then I was also a little embarrassed because I apparently had been a little too enthusiastic. I guess the next phase that I knew them through was, and I'll make this one short. They went on their honeymoon, and it was Bosco's idea, since they had time and money, to go and visit all the sites, places where Van Gogh had been in Holland and in Belgium. And to that end, Gerben had bought them and refurbished an Austin Healey 3000 Mark II, a beautiful automobile for their travels. I was very, very envious of it. Bosco had it altered a little bit so that by shortening the exhaust pipe, he could make it sound much louder than normally would with a good muffler. So he frequently enjoyed revving the engine for the sound. And in the book, I I talk about how that trip went for them as they reported it to me. We had many good times together. They would come and visit me in the States and have me come and visit them. We remained very, very good friends. It was this part's going to be hard. I remember discreetly shoveling dirt from a mound onto a casket, a beautiful casket. I remember I was so pained that I dissociated. I took my dissociated self down into the casket to see Mariah. She wasn't there. She was gone. It was gelid there. She was gelid gone. And when I came back to myself, I saw Bosco holding Gerben, who was bent over, holding him in his arms and helping him to the limousine at the graveyard. And I watched them get into that beautiful black limousine, that horrible black tank of hell. Then I got to go in into that same place with them. Mariah had died of metastatic breast cancer, the same thing that killed her mother. I think there's a genetic basis for it, I'm not sure. But it strikes women in their early 40s and kills them. It is a virulent disease. And because she was sick, I was invited back to Amsterdam. And Gerben stepped out and rented me a canal boat. I was working on my dissertation, so I had the time. And she would come down and visit me. She said, "Bobby, you are our writer in residence." And I was touched by that. It was such a sweet statement to make. Yeah, I guess I was. I won't take you through it all. But during that time, and previous to that, Mariah had gotten rather serious about her journey, her individuation process, as the Jungians call it. And she had become fascinated by the distaff side of Jung's life, specifically Emma Jung and Tony Wolff. She said, "Bobby, Emma Jung is really the unsung hero of this story of his life. She held him together. She was all that." And I in my research, I completely agree with her. And another time, she'd come down and sometimes I would just drink wine with her because that was red wine was her favorite. And I didn't always drink Heineken. I remember sitting up on the top of the canal boat one afternoon with her. And she said, "Bobby, I'm a hetera." And now I've done enough Jungian research and I've read Tony Wolff enough to know what a hetera is. But I said to her, "What do you mean, Mariah?" And she said, "I love children. I love little ones, but I'm not a mother. I'm a hetera. I'm Bosco's girl. My relationship is primarily defined by my love for Bosco and our life together. And I was just so touched with that insight because, in my opinion, she is absolutely spot on with it. And if you have time, check out Tony Wolf's definition of hetera. We had many conversations, and in my book, I try, because she didn't get to finish all the work that she did. She died before she got to it all and could publish it. So I was pretty aware. Bosco's the artist, I'm the academic, or sort of academic. So I think in the catabolic time of her life, she turned to me with her thoughts and her ideas that were taking hold in that which she was seriously pursuing for her own research reasons. So I titled that part of that chapter the optional chapter, if you get to it. It's kind of involved, but I felt that I had to do right by Mariah to publish or to write basically where she was going in her investigation and in her own individuation process. So, I don't know if you've ever gone down that road with anyone. There's a quality I don't much care for, and that is assumed optimism. After every operation, after every bout with chemo, you got words like, we're cautiously optimistic, or the margins look good, or, there's no element of any problem here for now. And that wasn't the case. It always came back. And finally, she got to a point where she just had enough. They had removed both her breasts. And she just said, I can't do this anymore. I need to die. And she asked me to help her with her dreams. I've had a lot of Jungian analysis. I'm pretty familiar with dream interpretation. And so I was the person that was allowed to be present anytime she wanted to summon me. I've made the story about Mariah and Bosco rather simple, too simple, in fact. There were a lot of countervailing forces. She had a sister, Ruby Jane. There were other people involved in her life. Gerben was married more than once. It got very complicated. And a lot of people, and I really objected to this after a while, I'm still hot about it. I'm PO'd. Because of their status in Dutch society, it was kind of considered cool to have access to Mariah during her illness, or her recovery, as everybody called it, which it was hardly. But there was a kind of an implied status that if you got to hang out with Mariah, you were kind of special. And I didn't like that at all, because Mariah figured it out after a while that this was bullshit. That these people were genuine, but there was also some importance to their status, being able to be with Mariah and talk with her. And so finally she cut it all off. She cut almost everybody out, but there was still a lot of infighting and struggle. And she was she eventually ended up at the hospice Stella Maris. And I remember going to visit her there at her invitation. I remember walking down the halls and thinking to myself, everybody in this place is dying. This is a house of death. And that hit me profoundly. I remember remember walking into her room. She was there in bed. She was sedated with heavy medication. But she recognized me, and she smiled that enigmatic smile I knew so well. And her eyes were still quite blue. And I got close to the bed. She motioned me over, and I got close to the bed, and we looked at each other. And she giggled. A reserved giggle, but that giggle that she always had. And her voice was soft and broken. She said, "Give me a hug, Bobby." And I did. And I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Bob, that's an amazing story that you've just shared with us. And of course, as I've been immersed in your book the last week, I knew what was coming, and you did better than I could do. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Skip, I want to say just briefly, I also want to apologize at the same time I share this with you all, and I'm honored to be sharing. You know, and I don't want to take anything away from the magic of Mariah and my relationship to Bosco to this day. But I don't open that door very often. And I'm sure all of us have that place inside of them, that special place. So in the spirit of our time together, I open that door and share it with you, but I am closing that door, and I don't anticipate opening it again unless I just don't anticipate opening it again. And thank you for witnessing. So back to you, Skip.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talked about in your book was your sharing of you're sharing with Bosco and Gerben after Mariah's death, and you were talking about a special visit to the Rijksmuseum to see the Night Watch, and I wonder, I know that Colleen is very interested in Rembrandt, so I wonder if you'd just go to that part of the story and talk about that. Can we do that? If not, then we'll move on.
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak very elegantly or very well about it right now, but you know, to me, the Night Watch embraces the Dutch society. It embraces their spirit. I mean, it's kind of reductionistic, but I don't mean it that way. There's a profundity to that painting that touches everybody. It's Rembrandt, you know, but it's the Night Watch, and I'd very much like to hear from Colleen at this point. Any thoughts she may have.
Okay, well, before we do that, one of the things that I'd like to do is, because I think that this, while your experience was, just incredibly numinous and amazing, but the Callow Fellow, we have a lot of young men who follow this channel, and the Callow Fellow who falls in love with the beautiful woman in youth is a pretty common story. It's happened to me a few times, I must say. and and so my friend Tim has similar experience, which he had, I don't know how many years ago, quite a while ago, which he made a video about. And so I want to invite Tim to talk about the visitation of the muse. That was his experience. So Tim.
Sure. Yeah, this is very reminiscent. I think for a lot of us, especially men, there's this mystical figure that is, I think, best illustrated by the myth of Tristan and Isolde. If you can look that up, it's a 12th century story that has come down through Western culture, that is really kind of the basis of Western idea of romanticism and what the relationship is about between the man and the woman. And back 30 some years ago, I was in the middle of this pretty successful artistic career, and I began to realize that my inspiration and my life and my manager's life all depended on my inspiration. And I didn't know anything about my inspiration. So I started looking. I didn't even have much of this is just when I was starting to study Jung, and I didn't understand so much about the psychology of a human being. But what I started to discover was this mysterious female figure that I pretty shortly realized is the figure of my muse. And so I'll put in the chat here a link to this video that was eventually made. Over the next several years, I started to really dive into the mystery of where this creative energy comes from. And somewhere toward the beginning of this search, I went to a play that my father was in, a production of Hamlet, where he was playing Hamlet's father's ghost. And the woman who's playing Ophelia was actually a friend of mine. I didn't know her that well, but we knew each other, and I helped her paint the set and so forth. And she came on stage wearing this white dress, and I was just absolutely smitten by this person. And I didn't even know what was going on. I had just been married. And so if I had not been so subsumed in my marriage, I probably would have thought that I was just falling in love with a younger woman. But then after a couple of days, I began to realize this is the figure of my muse. Or as Jung would say, this is the image of the anima that takes the male and shoves his face into the mud, kind of. And it happens to each of us in a different way, but what you're talking about is I think, really typical. We men fall in love with this magical image of the woman, and especially the woman that we can't have. Because oftentimes, if it's the woman we can have, we grab her, we take her home, and over the next several months, the magic disappears. And then we think, oh my gosh, she wasn't who I thought she was. And we kind of are thrown back into the ignorant world of distance from our own anima. And what Carl Jung was able to get through to me was that there's an image that is inside of the man that is never attainable. And this is what the myth of Tristan and Isolde brings out, that there is Tristan falls in love with two different Isoldes. And one is the one he tries to take home that he can never possess. And the second one, called Isolde of the White Hands, is an actual person, a queen in this case, that he marries and he's able to put his arms around and take home. And I think what that makes us confront ourselves with as men is I think we need two spouses. One is the one that we marry and can sleep with at night. And the second one is this image, like the Virgin Mary or the Muse in my case, or the Mariah in your case, that is constantly this spiritual inspiration, a Hytera, if you will, who hovers outside of our grasp and is always urging us forward. And usually it's in a sort of a incredibly frustrating way, because you can never get a hold of it. And in my case, it jumps between different women in the actual world. And so as I mature, I begin to realize, oh my gosh, it's always going to jump from one person to another. And so I can go to the grocery store and all of a sudden see this magical woman there and say, yep, there she is. That's the Muse. And I can't go and talk to her. I can't take her home. It's in fact a little bit dangerous if I try to talk to her and say something like, oh, you're so beautiful or whatever, because I can't be I can't be an authentic individual in her presence, because she's a spiritual creature. What I have to do is get a hold of that idea, to be aware that this is not an earthly creature, this is a spiritual creature, that she is mine and she's not anybody else's. And if I want to have a dialogue, I have to have it in some form, like poetry or something. As you were talking, I've done a bunch of illustrations of the Mariah that I see when you're talking.
Great.
And I will actually send you some of these, but I don't want to take any more time. If you want to look at the video, it kind of describes my experience with my muse, which turned into a museum show. That's what the video is about. But it's this invitation to go into your deepest self and find that mysterious partner that we never can identify. And I'm eager to hear what Colleen has to say about this from a woman's perspective, because in a patriarchal culture, the thing that you and I are talking about, the man's pursuit of this spiritual, mystical woman, is a very different thing than a woman's pursuit of the masculine spirit. So enough of me. I want to turn it over to Colleen.
Thank you, Tim, Skip, Bob. Well, it's so true. I think that Jung knew where to draw the line, that the women were going to have to do this work for themselves. And so our animus comes along and we fall in love. And that happens over and over. But what is the character? It's so eros for you men. I think it's harder for men because it's so emotional. And up to that point, it seems to me that emotions are not something that men have had an opportunity to develop, just to repress so that they can succeed in life and get by with it. But for us as women, it's a logos thing. It's a fascination of the meaning of life. And the projection, it will be on usually an authority figure, somebody who has the word which could be a therapist, it could be a priest, it could be a lawyer, it could be a philosopher, it could be a mentor in graduate school, it could be a teacher in art. But the thing that Jung has helped me to understand is that it's a different thing. It's not a husband. And that I'm to learn, I'm not to own. And so it is another path. I want to say something though now about Rembrandt and you, Bob, and your role for Mariah as your anima, and how you served as an animus for Mariah, and that she needed to educate her animus so that she could learn, so that she could find a common language with you
Oh,
to learn.
good point. Thank you.
You
Yeah, I hadn't thought, Colleen, I hadn't even thought of that. Wow.
the language of the body. There you go. It's the anima projection. So she needed for you to use your body with her body in order to communicate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that together she especially later on when she had immersed herself in the whole Jungian thing, the individuation process, our relationship evolved, and it became a more, it was always what it was, but there was an intellectual quality to it that she was starting to superimpose on the relationship. She wanted to talk about what I thought, and I was, at that time, I was very fortunate. I was allowed to do my dissertation on the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale and its relationship to masculine consciousness, which was really just a remarkable thing, given that it's from the University of Maryland, which is a hardcore, statistically driven, research-oriented school. And without getting to all the details, I had wise mentors and people with authority that were allowing me that opportunity to explore that fairy tale in Jungian depth, and if successful, would award me a doctorate. And that was of tremendous interest to Mariah.
Yes, yes. Well, how perfect that you would be doing Sleeping Beauty. The way
Well, good point.
And I love that they called you their artist in residence. It was a very healthy, could have been dangerous, but healthy way to include you and to define your role of bringing the intellectual into the situation. But what I want to comment on, though, is your presentation today. So transparent, so open. The veil is so open. And that's not often the way, especially with Jungian presenters. They tend to give us a lot of information from the head.
Colleen, I have given a fair amount of talks professionally, academic, Jungian, and this is, as I said to Skip going into this is the first time I'm going to allow this side of myself to be expressed and explored. So thank you, because this is very personal. This isn't academic stuff. I can do that. I don't know if I could do this though.
Well, let's look at Rembrandt.
All right.
What he did. Skip, I sent you those images. Are they available?
Well, at least one of them is. I'll start with that one first, and then I'll see if I can bring up the others.
Okay, well, Rembrandt, this was an early self-portrait. Now, this was done in 1629. Rembrandt was born in 1606, so he was 23 years old. But well before that, they knew, his family knew he was a genius, that he could do this. The parallel I want to draw is between Bob and Rembrandt. So there's no cover up here. This is who Rembrandt, this is how he saw himself. This painting is only about 8.5 by 14, I think, 12 or 14. They're all very small. But you see how he captures himself. There's no cover up. Now let's go to the next one. Here he is with Sashka, his wife, whom he adored. Now, we don't know, we think we don't know very much about Rembrandt, but actually we do. When I decided that I needed to learn about Rembrandt just a couple months ago, actually, I looked for what he might have written. The Anonymous is looking for what did Rembrandt write about? What did he tell us about? But I found out that he didn't write anything. He was not a writer. He wrote a few letters, which are inconsequential. They're not about his life, and they're not about art. What he did was at least 130 self-portraits. His books, his textbooks are full of self-portraits. So what Rembrandt showed us was Rembrandt, not a lot of stuff about how to be a painter. Now, these are also self-portraits, and you can see the change in his life from 1650 to 1660. He died in 1609. So just looking at these four, you see the top left one, he's younger. In fact, the top two ones, he is younger, 1650. He's presenting himself. He goes through a period of putting on the persona of the successful painter. And this top left one shows you that. Here I am dressed up, and I will do your portrait. And it will be an honest portrait, which was very questionable. You know, we go to the night watch, but those were the kind of portraits that people wanted to have painted of themselves. He began to lose favor as he got more and more honest about what people really looked like. And so he gets more and more honest about himself at the same time. The lower one on the left is incredibly so. I mean, what a difference between, it's almost like the conscious Rembrandt on the top and the unconscious Rembrandt at the bottom. Yeah. Here he's gone through bankruptcy. He's lost it all. Sashka has died. He eventually takes on a model who becomes his mistress, with whom he has children. And this one on the lower right is much later in his life. That is 60, and he died in 69. So he would have been, what, 63, 50, 53, in his mid-50s. Let's go to the next one then, Skip. Here we have him very much at the end. He's, I think this is actually the last year of his life. So because there are 130 of these at least that we know of, this is what we learn from Rembrandt, is this transparency about himself. Who was the man? And that's what I think we experienced of you today, Bob, and I thank you for that. It wasn't a lecture about Jung. And Rembrandt didn't give us passages about how to paint. We wanted to show this one. This was at the time of his bankruptcy and his falling. It was a few years before he died. He doesn't call it a self-portrait, but there's nothing else in his oeuvre that is like this. Usually it's hidden in a much larger painting. But this realization of what happens to the human being, the individuation, the veil has dropped. And I think that's it, Skip. Did I send any more of Rembrandt?
Nope, that's all you sent.
I hope the point is being made.
So one of the things that Bob has helped us with today is consciousness and our own consciousness. And one of the topics that is covered in Bob's book is the topic of the water bearer and the water bearer imago. And Bob has very kindly and courageously agreed to let us gain some consciousness about him and about ourselves, I suppose. And Bob, I wonder if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about the water bearer imago.
Thank you, Skip. Sure. If you have a chance, I've just released my website called arsnovaalchemy.com. Ars Nova means new art in Latin. And I explore in some depth the Aquarian imago. It's my opinion that the imago itself, understood symbolically, is mankind's ability now that we have evolved to a state of consciousness where we can look at our own unconscious consciously. The unconscious in the imago is the water being poured from the vessel, usually by a woman who's looking at it. That's my favorite. In some cases, she's carrying it on her shoulder. But the one I like is where she is pouring it from one cask to another, fresh water, because that's the water of value. And if we understand correctly Jung's symbology, we can see that here is the human figure for the first time being able to look at water consciously or looking at the unconscious, which is we've just begun to do with Jung's incredible Rosetta Stone. He has given us the means to understand our unconscious, or as I like to say, the burrito, but irrespective. The imago itself, the part that's so compelling for me is we can understand our dreams now. You know, we can proceed with the mystery of synchronicity to enhance our life, to create mystery that we can participate in, that we don't have to solve anymore. We can just be a part of it, and maybe it will inform us. So for me, I've been working on that imago image for at least 20 years, trying to get my mind around it as best as I can. And that's the gist of it. I can say a lot more, but for our purposes, the short of it is mankind being able to look at her own unconscious. Wow. That's why I think it's a new consciousness for man, womankind. And that's what gets me so excited about the Aquarian age, because, you know, we're brand new to it. And I'll throw one more thought out. So, you know, everybody likes to know, when exactly did this start? And this is just a fun thing that I'll roll out to you. So I've been thinking about this for, as I said, at least 20 years. When did the Aquarian age really start? and nobody knows for sure. But the fun one I have is when my answer to that mega question or silly question, I think the Aquarian age technically started when man in 1969 put his foot on the moon and could consciously look back at Earth and see our planet from the moon. And then you've got a really cool duality going. But anybody else is welcome to, when you think the Aquarian age starts or started or is going to start. I mean, it's just kind of a fun thing. But for me, I kind of think that was the exact inauguration of it. And we really don't quite know what to do with that, as we haven't gone back to the moon, but we did it, but we don't understand it yet. So anyway, I just throw that out for fun.
May I?
Sure.
That's so wonderful. I remember being in Marshall Field's department store and hearing over the loudspeakers, ladies and gentlemen, we have just landed on the moon. And I saw a globe there that they had, which you could plug in, and the light bulb lit up in the middle of it, and the Earth made its way around that, and the moon made its way around the Earth. And I bought it and took it home that day to my kids. This is it. Everything is changing from now on. And I think everybody, I don't remember what happened after that, but the moment certainly crystallized something at that time. And I think everybody ought to try to remember where they were at the time that we landed on the moon, and what effect did that have on you. I think it was definitely a big part of it. Yeah.
Well, there's a little known fact here that Bob and Tim and I have been talking about this issue for some weeks now, actually, and and we've been talking about it with Colleen and some other artist friends, and have come to the idea that the water bearer is going to be a theme of a confluence that we're going to have next summer at Tim's studio in Helena, Montana. And so in trying to prepare for that, we wanted to prepare a landing page that people could refer to learn more information about it. The landing page has not yet been published, but Tim was kind enough to do a rendering of the imago, the water bearer imago, and I want to invite Tim to share it with us now.
Sure. This is a series of sketches that I did recently with this idea in mind. The kind of symbolism that Bob is talking about is what inspired this. The idea that consciousness, Bob equates with the water that's being poured, and the way I envision it is this kind of hooded figure, some kind of a priestess maybe, who controls the water and pours it out for us. And we are the recipients of this magical, has many names in alchemy, but this water is the consciousness that allows us to see ourselves in relation to the universe. And just like a dream image, I think any kind of image is a reflection of our psyche. And so we are both of these characters. We are both the pourer and the receiver. and we are also the water of consciousness that is able to scrutinize our own situation from outside ourselves, which is the arising consciousness that in human beings has only been here for the few thousand years. It's a very, very recent development. And I think Bob points out that the first indication of unconsciousness is the beginning of the 19th century. Did I get that right, Bob?
Yep. Yes. The unconscious has been around since mankind's been around, but we only discovered it, if you will, effectively in the last 100 years. And it was Jung whose genius has articulated it in a way that can sustain us. I'm very familiar with Freudian theory, but in my opinion, it goes nowhere. What Jung provided with the individuation process and the integration of consciousness with the unconscious and self-understanding gives us an opportunity to find satisfaction and meaning in our life in a growing, healthy, positive way, not something to figure out or resolve or reduce or eliminate. And to that, Tim, the consciousness, the water, which the alchemists would refer to as the elixir, is the magic piece that allows transformation, growth, and further personal development to one's satisfaction, not a reduction of our essence or a figuring it out. Freud never understood that participation in unconscious processes can lead to personal edification, growth, and development. You only went there as long as you had to, and once you figured it out, you didn't go any further. And with Jung, the beauty of the individuation process is twofold. One, it really works. And two, it's possible to attain. So I'll turn it back to you, Tim.
Well, I'm eager to hear what Joss has to say. She's had her hand up for quite a while. And I just wanted to add that I am eager to hear from the women in the group because we need more of the feminine perspective. And here we live in this patriarchal culture. We are constantly hearing from men. And
Right.
so, Josh.
So Tim, before we do that, I know everybody in the gallery is angry at me for not getting to Q&A yet, but I want to do that. But Bob, I just want to ask you if you want to take a 5-minute break before we begin Q&A.
Yes, and I very much like to hear from Josh. Josh, I can't say your name.
Joss.
Aloha, Robert. Oh my God. Let me just say that my heart just was pierced by your presentation, and it's not just presentation, but really your bravery for just being so vulnerable, and especially for a man. Women can do that all the time, but for a man, I bow to you.
And to Mariah, don't.
Yes, and Mariah too. Yes.
She's inspirational.
Well, I want to say a little more here. It's like there's a Khalil Gibran saying that, how shall my heart be unsealed unless it is broken? Mm-hmm. And I saw, your heart just wide open, Mariah and Bosco. Yes, I mean, they helped you in your, if you call Jungian individuation to get to the point where, you matured in your love. They say love is boundless, and it's really only in the human form, the in the earthly plane that we kind of have to set our boundaries because we're in a dualistic, how should I say, holograph here. But love is boundless. So it is beautiful that you bring up this love that expands beyond just a couple. And I just want to say that, Mariah represented life. Like Jung and Joseph Campbell would say, woman is the archetype of life. So she was the one who really brought you to your true higher self. Like Carl Jung says in his most famous line, love, the mystic flower of the soul. This is the center, the self. So I just hope that what you gave today to us participants, as well as those listening, and of course, Skip, when this is going to be YouTube, that this will be not set in vain. If anything, it may hopefully pierce many, many people all across the globe, and if not beyond the universe, because this is really the point in being in touch with the transcendent. She brought you to transcendent, and that is really the purpose of why we're here. So thank you so much, Robert. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Namaste.
Okay, before we continue with other questions, let's take 5 minutes to give Bob a break, and then we'll come back. And if you wish to ask a question, put your cursor at the bottom of the screen and find the raise hand symbol, which will create a queue to ask questions. And when we come back in 5 minutes, I'll go from the top of the queue. So Bob, if you would like, you can put your cursor over the upper right corner of your square, and that will allow you to select stop video and mute yourself. So you can mute yourself and stop video, and then when you're back and ready to answer questions, you can unmute yourself and restart the video. Okay.
Yes, I want to thank Joss very much for those wonderful words.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That means the world to me, Joss.
Yeah. Thank you
I'll
so
be back.
much. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break, and I'm not going to discontinue the session or anything, but and then we'll be back. And I will mark the time. Okay.
If anybody has any comments or anything before we start up again, chime in. Otherwise, I'm just going to show some of these other drawings I did of Mariah while he was talking. You know, it's such a compelling image of this, you know, this strange, erotic, compelling, inspirational woman. I was just really taken by the descriptions he had, and as usually I can't stop from drawing. You know, most of the time in my in my waking life, I'm sketching or doodling or something, and so I did a series of just sketches of what I heard in the story, trying to imagine who this amazing woman must have looked like. You know, here's the tango. As she gets toward the end, how she had to deal with her her own grief, dealing with her disease, and how people were responding to her, and the kind of effect that that had on Bob. And this is the one I showed before. It's just this kind of mystical figure. Anyway, my intention is to mail these to Bob sometime. Annette, did you have something you wanted to say? I saw your hand go up at one point.
Yeah, I just was brought back to Haarlem again. It was the last place I lived in the Netherlands before I moved to Ireland. So I remember those streets he's talking about. So it was very
Okay.
visual for me. And yeah, the beautiful way he expressed the relationship, of course. And yeah, I also thought of the many, how women actually have more than one animus figure often, isn't it? That
Oh, is
animus
that
is
right?
not, I think so. Is that, what do other women think here? But I think I've heard it often said that the animus often is a group of men in women's dreams. Is that
Huh.
right?
Well, that kind of figures in terms, if you look at, there are different women in Jung's life and different women figures in that respect. So if you turn it around, then you would have that about men, I would think. So that's just my opinion. So
What do you think, Joss?
Oh yes, vive la différence. But it's wonderful that yes, we can be so creative. I mean, why not, right? The universe is our playground for creativity, so why not?
So Tim, don't forget to give us the link to the visitation by the Muse so that I can put it out on the YouTube chat as well.
Okay, I put that in once before, but here it is again.
Okay, I didn't see it go by. I'm sorry. This is truly a breathtaking book. There are so many facets to it, and I've already talked to Bob about giving us probably several further sessions, but it seems in order to cover some of the depth of this book, because we actually didn't get into any of the alchemy here at all, per se, and so those issues deserve good attention. But I wanted to today to first, set the scene for this book, and to draw people into it. And we'll be getting further into it at a future time, perhaps in September. But for now, this is an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience for me to read the book in the first place, but then to hear Bob's recounting the story directly, that was truly amazing. Wow. So. Yeah, I agree, Skip. And I picked it up and I was expecting to read something about alchemy, and then the story unfolded. Yes. And it just was amazing. And I just was just like you. It was just the response to that was so visceral. And Bob to reveal, his, he just, today, Bob, you undressed yourself, and you really came from the heart, as Josh said, and I really appreciate that. And sure, we can get in later on to the alchemy part. But also, he mentioned he has a website that he just, the Ars Nova's alchemy.com. I've got archery in there. And I watched the little vignettes, Bob, that you had on your website, and they're just wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Jerome.
you did not, I did not know who you were speaking with. Was that Bosco?
No, he would not. There's so much more to say about him since Mariah's been gone, but he has stayed very true to his commitment to invisibility. I'd love to tell you more about him, but you're not. He is the opposite of a self-promoter. He now has a great deal of money. He inherited part of Gerben's fortune. And no, that's Mark Ford. He's he's helped me in so many ways. He's a great guy, but that's Mark Ford that's asking the questions.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Mark Ford then. But anyway, I'm ready to see the movie made on this thing. So
Yes.
That's what Judy says too.
I agree. Yeah.
She thinks it might be a Netflix serial or maybe a Hallmark movie. I don't know. I'd be open to it as long as they did it right.
I was just thinking about that. It's like Bosco, and he's retracing Van Gogh's steps, and he travels everywhere Van Gogh went, and that's one storyline.
Well, yeah. Jerome, though, he bailed on it at one point. That is, they started out that way, but it became just kind of too difficult. So they augmented it, but they went to many places.
Oh, he was trying to get into Van Gogh's skin, I guess, and that was his whole passion about this Van Gogh in his whole life. So very compelling,
And his artwork is tremendous. He is a tremendous artist. He has a great style. It's just beautiful work.
I think you should mention where he lives now.
Well, he lives in South Central Pennsylvania on a farm.
Oh, wow.
In a beautiful home that he wants nobody to visit.
Is there a way we can see his work online somewhere?
No, he's Tim. This is Bosco through and through. He creates new names. He shows his work in galleries in several places, Buenos Aires, Paris. And he changes the names on his artwork because he says he's the anti-narcissist. He said, all I want to do is create and I want to give. And if what people see in the gallery is worth what I'm asking for it, then I'm honored that they would purchase it. But he has not developed. I mean, it sounds so odd for an artist to be so self-effacing, but he's very matter of fact. He says, look, I don't need money. I have been very, very fortunate in my life. And therefore, my artwork stands on its own. And he takes great pride in what gets sold. I mean, he's not indifferent in the least, but he says, I don't want to be great. I don't want to be known. So some of the fun we've had through the years is making up names for him to sign his artwork by. No shit. I mean, it sounds incredible, but
I totally understand that. Man.
Do you, Tim?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't.
I've been really tempted to come up with personas for that reason.
Really?
Yeah.
But like you, once you've seen your work, you can't hide. I mean, your work, your aesthetic is so true to you, just as it is for Bosco. So he's a great aficionado of Van Gogh, but he's got his own style, and I like it. It's very talented. So thanks for understanding. I've just thought it was a peculiarity of his that was too far out for me.
No, if I could add, Shoshi Hamada, a great Japanese ceramist, does not sign his work.
Oh,
no,
okay.
He does not sign his work. He says the work has a life of its own. It would be like signing your child.
No, Colleen, that's, and if anybody
has a box made for the pieces, and he signs the box, but not the piece.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. So Diane has a question. Diane Shabam. You just need there.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why it takes so long. I don't know. I don't really have a question. I just want to express how privileged I feel to have been witness to this and to belong to this group, and how privileged to know Skip, and also to tell Tim that I have seen your video, Visitation of the Muse, and how tastefully it was done, and how privileged to have that from the point of view of a male. And how many men are that open to express their emotions? I have not had a lot of experience with that. But I also thought, since you asked about my experience with the Muse, I'm a writer. I mean, I'm a writer, and I've, when I was, first of all, I need to go one step back. In 1969, when man first stepped on the moon, I think I agree with you that the real magic probably started there. It began before, because Jung was opening us to this back in the turn of the century, past century. And, but anyway, in 1969, that summer was my first class I took, or the only real class I took about Jung per se. And it's been an influence in my life since then. But when I was younger and I was living in Kuwait, I was meditating one day. I always had a desire to write something, and I was looking for an inspiration. And that day, a vision came to me in a daydream of an animus figure, which I call the beloved. And it was my inspiration for the book that I wrote, Where Dreams Coincide. And that, to me, the beloved is within me. It's the spirit within me that makes me whole. And I don't have to find it outside of myself. I see it in men, and they serve that role for me, and many men, as you said. But and that at the end of my book, the realization is that is always with me in this lifetime, in every lifetime, and beyond. And that's been my experience. So I wanted to be as transparent as you have been, and just share that with you, Tim and Bob and Skip and all of the other men here too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's great.
Are there other questions or comments before? So Julie, did you want to say something? You have to unmute, Jewel. Cannot hear you.
Got it. I received more from this than I could have ever thought. Several of the comments, one was the synchronicity, one was the year of Aquarius, 1969. And so much happened with me in my world in 1969, and it's being shared here. I won't go into my personal sharing. This isn't my time, but it did. It was then a couple of years later was a dream that came through, which I'm still living today. And other things that have brought me to this meeting with this group of people to hear today and was with Jung, I think, again, is synchronicity in life of reaching out and the right people coming at the right time. And one of the things that I had found, I'd even shared a week or so ago about perhaps I needed to pick up the sword as my warrior again. And today, building on that, according to the comments today, I realized in the sharing, he said he found his animus. And I looked back at that, and where I see what it spoke to me as a female and asking a female perspective, in my life right now, I am carrying the role of a full household by myself individually. So I have to do the man things and the female things as a single individual. And I realized that the masculine was becoming so much stronger that I had lost that femininity. And by coming and hearing the artist, it's reminded me that I once was have never gone outside to mow my yard unless I had my earrings on and my makeup on and my lipstick on. Now I don't care what I look like. And I went, oh my goodness. So I need to grow my animus. My animus might need to take a lower thing and build up my anima within me. But the other part is to let the animus go down in statue. But I can say from a female perspective, the way it energizes me is using it as the sense of a logos and a goal and a model is to get infatuated with a brain of someone, and it just causes me to want to go ahead and put on my makeup and my hair, my earrings, which I'm not wearing lipstick again. So thank you for that sharing. I found out something through your sharing that I had let go dormant. So I don't know what I'll look like next time I see you. But
Oh, thank you so much, Jewel. That was lovely. Okay, are there any other comments? Bob, you've been very patient with us, and I genuinely appreciate it, and look forward to sharing more parts of your book. Is there anybody else that wants to speak now, though? Okay, Miles wants to.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. So I learned another word today, and that is callow. So maybe I need to read more, but it's not a word part of my lexicon. So I looked it up, and of course it made sense. I understood it in the context as an immature or inexperienced person, particularly I say a young man. And it's an example of so many words that have not been part of my lexicon. And I thank Skip for bringing me along and educating me on many of these words, such as logos and eros, individuation, synchronicity, anima, animus, the self. And so I would say that I've been a callow person because I never encountered these concepts before. And I'm in Canada, and we're grappling with a very serious situation that has been uncovered, a sort of a horrible skeleton in the closet. And there was a social psychologist talking on this issue on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation radio. And I'd never heard of the term social psychologist, but there's a need for social psychology, and I would assume that that's a different word from being a sociologist.
Yeah.
Social psychologist, it's really about why is it that young men and women, but particularly young men, because we had a horrible situation last week, a 20-year-old man, and it's the police have said it was a racially motivated hate crime against Muslim people. He ran his car over a family, and
Oh
only
my
a
gosh.
9-year-old, yeah, only a 9-year-old boy survives. And this social psychologist said that, well, in a person like that, it starts with a grievance, and there's a grievance that's generated probably because of what their misconceptions they're learning about others. And then there's an ideology, there's others that are promoting that sort of an ideology, like Proud Boys, for example, which apparently, I'm sorry to say, I heard started in Canada. And then, so from grievance to ideology to violence and even terrorism. So that's what Skip's all about. He's trying to educate people about the concepts of Jung, and not just for the personal individuation process, but for the collective benefit. So anyway, I've rambled along, but maybe you want to share about that in any way you want.
Do you want to comment, Bob, or I thought Miles pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, my comment is we all have a shadow, and we've all been wronged. We have all been hurt unjustly, some more than others. I don't think you can ever compare yourself at that level to anyone else. And that evil does exist in this world, and there are black-hearted people participating in it. This is not news to anyone. The sadness is that it gets traction in some places that, as you said, Miles, requires action. My feeling is that only by scrutinizing our own shadow, becoming aware of it, do we keep from projecting it onto others. And if we can withhold that projection from a stereotype or an individual and lay claim to at least part of it ourselves, we're much less likely to articulate ourselves in such a violent way.
Thank you. Gilda, you had your hand up, but you retracted it. Do you have a question?
Oh, hello, Bob. Thank you for bringing in the lovely words. We just wanted to share that something about being tantric is being initiated, and it started last century, and Jung brought the pathway to create that tantric connection between reflection and projection that is not all out there. It does not all resolve out there. Just like you mentioned, some of it one has to process inside, and that is, in my estimation, where wisdom comes in. Then one can choose when and what is appropriate to release, even if it's truth or just as it may show up. So tantricness it's something that requires relationship. It requires a communion. And in my estimation, that's what has been missing. Inner and outer laced together, and individuation affords that. And we wanted to share an image from a oracle card tarot we have that is Northern European. And we find that perhaps because they're from the north, where the magnetic north resides, or call it what you may, since we're speaking about Aquarius, the water bearer. But in fact, Aquarius is an air sign. So when we're choosing to depict an image of the Aquarian age with the same water as Pisces that we have just finished, something is missing. So because it is an air sign. which, so we want to show this image, which in our estimation resembles what something Aquarian may look like in a tantric connection. There's shape coming out of the negative space. It's cosmic. It is man and woman creating an X, a point where things intersect, but there's in empty space in the back, yet something is being created there that still one doesn't know. So it has to do with bandwidth, with electricity. Uranus rules Aquarius and Uranus rules electricity. So we just wanted to show that it's related to vibrations more than just the solid world out there where everything gets resolved. We sort of have come to a place where that no longer works. Kill you, kill me, destroy this, and start again, building it again, does not work anymore. We have to access, in our estimation, and you brought it in with your ability to be opened to something else that is vibrational. And a lot of it gets resolved in the virtual world before it ever becomes form. So that pathway that Jung described took us beyond words, beyond advertisement, beyond all these things into a personal experience, as well as a communion of some sort, a tantric communion, which does not stop inwardly, but if it never starts inwardly, then we're sadly missing. So when we hear a lot of the women, there's a big emphasis on women, which is fine. I'm one of them. But then it leaves the men kind of over there trying to grapple. And it's about both. It's not about going to the polarities for a long time, creating havoc, and then being forced and thrown into the opposite polarity, just because it is about being in the center, like that picture showed, and then emanating from the center what wants to be realized. Can you speak about that, Robert?
Thank you, Gilda. Do you comment, Bob?
What strikes me immediately is the self, the convergence of the masculine and the feminine, the interaction and the creative potential of the space with the human articulation in concert with each other. That's how it strikes me. That's my initial response. I like it very much. I'm very curious. I'm not a specialist in alchemy. I'm not a specialist in the zodiac. I'm just a clinical psychologist who has been fascinated by these things and realize the best way I can say it, and I say it over and over, is that I have no use to solve the mystery. I only want to participate in it and to be informed by it as much as it wishes to inform me for my participation.
Thank you for sharing it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Bob. I know that this has been a difficult thing for you to face. And so all I can say is it was wonderful. And let me show your book one more time in my screen share here. So we've been talking about Ars Nova, Understanding the Alchemical Mystery in the Age of Aquarius by Bosco and Robert Mannis. And, we've put the website onto both the chats, so you'll be able to find that. And Bob, do you have anything that you want to say to wrap up before I do a pitch for next week's presentation?
Yes, I do, Skip. I would like to thank you and Tim and Colleen and everyone that has deigned to visit with me. And I just want to say, as sincerely as I convey it, my appreciation for your participation in my journey. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Bob. Incredible work and an incredible experience for all of us. And so this has been part one of our discussion of Bob's book. There will be further parts coming. Probably the next part will be in September, I suppose. And I look forward to that because there's quite a bit of other texture in this book. But I thought that if we started with Mariah and Bosco, that would draw everybody to get a copy of it before the next time we do this. And so anyway, I want to just remind everyone that next week we have Unveiling Sophia, which is Heart Wisdom in the Age of Technology by Anne Elizabeth Taylor. And so Anne Taylor will be with us a week from today in the same time frame. And Anne Taylor is a woman who has literally worked in the medical field around the heart, the physical heart. And I see Jordi Gal has raised his hand. So Jordi's from Spain, Robert, and he's a medical doctor from Madrid, and I want to give him one opportunity here, and then we'll wrap things up. So Jordi, go ahead.
Hello everyone. Hi Skip. Here is 10:30 p.m. so it's quite late for our standards. I was silent and without image. It's very intimate what you have shared tonight with us. I have my doubts if it's wise to share that in an open channel, the recorded video, but it is up to you. I mean, there are issues of privacy and intimacy. I've been educated, and for me it's important to honor intimacy here. Very little to add to. I would like to read your book, something I hasn't done yet. It's not that easy to find it in what in American call my market, which is a word I hate. I'm not a market, but it's a language. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for, I will say almost a catharsis. I know it's a technical term, but it has been very, very intense. The words and the resonance of the words, the vibrations induced by the words. And there is plenty of things to put together. And again, I am pleased to find some old friends or acquaintances like U.S. LaFontaine and Tim and Gilda and everyone, and all the background comments through the chat, which hopefully will be time to go after that. Again, greetings from the other part of the world. Robert, a pleasure to have been in the background here. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. I'd like to simply respond a little bit to what Jordi said about the appropriateness of this, because I've been publishing things about Carl Jung for over a decade now. And it's been my observation that the Jungian community has been a very closed silo, and that's actually been part of my motivation. And my reason for doing what I do, and there's now 1,200 videos here, is because the collective, it has to know these things if we're going to adjust our behavior. I think that the Jungian community, like Jordy, considers these things intimate and private, and it certainly came up at the time of the publication of the Red Book, when half of the Jungian community didn't want to publish the Red Book because they thought it was private. You know, while the professional Jungian community keeps all this stuff in their silo, the world is going to hell in a basket. And if we don't allow in artists and others to also articulate these things, we're just going to destroy ourselves. And that's why I have done what I have done over the years. I'm extremely honored and grateful to have Bob Mannis make this presentation today, because he's, for me, he's like a white raven, because we haven't, white raven refers to an exchange between Dr. Jung and Victor White, who was a Dominican priest. And that exchange was the first thing that gave Dr. Jung confirmation about what he was doing. And so I've had a few white ravens over the years, thankfully, but Bob is one of those, and I very much appreciate it, and particularly given that he's a founder of the Jung Society of Washington. So thank you so much for that, Bob, because I think the world absolutely needs this sort of thing public. That's my opinion. And this isn't to say that what Jordy as a professional physician says is not right. Obviously there's rationality for that too, but we need it all, it seems to me. And I don't think we've entered into anybody's private psychic realm per se. I mean, obviously when someone opens up, as Bob did today, it's difficult. There's the potential for misuse and abuse, but man, I'm so appreciative, Bob. I just think it's so important what we're doing, and I very much appreciate your support here.
And Skip, thank you. I have tears in my eyes. This means a great deal to me, folks. And thanks for receiving me with the love and respect I can feel. And I'm stuck for words. And for me, that's saying a lot, because I got a lot of words. So I have to move to a little levity, otherwise the profundity of this moment will overwhelm me. So back to you, Skip. Thanks. And I'm honored. I'm very, very honored that you would deign to be here with me, listen to me, and share with me your response, as I appreciate everything that everyone has said. There's not been a bad or a negative or harsh word. And I appreciate your sensitivity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I hope to see you soon in Annapolis.
or in Shepherdstown.
Right, you're on. Okay, so folks, thank you for being with me today. I'm going to terminate at this point because we're 2 hours and 40 minutes into it. And so we'll see you next week at 2 p.m. Eastern time for and Elizabeth Taylor, and Unveiling Sophia, which will be more about the emerging feminine. So look forward to seeing you then. Tim, did you have any final thought here?
No, what a brilliant presentation. Thank you, Bob, and thanks everybody for being here. Blessings.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Take care now. Bye-bye.